Since the Russian invasions of eastern Ukraine and Crimea in 2014, Ukraine has been engaged in sweeping reforms of its judicial, economic, and security systems, all aimed at bringing the former Soviet republic more closely in line with NATO and EU membership criteria. In parallel, the 57-member nation OSCE, the Organization for Security Cooperation in Europe, has stepped up a number of projects in Ukraine to fortify good governance, media freedoms, environmental security, and other elements of so-called soft power to help Kiev meet current and future challenges. And with me in the studio now is Jeff Erlich, acting head of mission for OSCE's project coordinator in Ukraine, and he'll talk about this vital and often overlooked mission for augmenting security through soft power. Hey, Jeff, welcome.
Thanks, Barbara.
So tell us, you've been based in Kiev for 4 years, a very challenging time for Ukraine. Give us some examples of how amorphous, intangible methods of soft power contribute materially to Ukrainian security.
Sure. I mean, I'd start just by saying that the OSCE takes a comprehensive approach to security. The idea being that issues that you described maybe as soft power, like say media freedom, transparent elections, all contribute to security. Mm-hmm. The idea being that where there are kind of breaches of these fundamental rights, the security situation is more likely to worsen. Sure. Secondly, the cooperation aspect, which is also in the name of the organization, is that the participating states in the OSCE have agreed to monitor kind of each other's work. So OSCE is very well known in the region for election monitoring. Also in Ukraine right now we have a second mission, the Special Monitoring Mission, which is monitoring the security situation there. Mm-hmm. Examples of projects. So I guess I would just give maybe one, which is actually fairly soft, it's probably our least concrete project, which is supporting a culture of dialogue. And what this means is that we use professional dialogue facilitators, we train dialogue facilitators to mediate discussions between usually government actors mm-hmm. and then civil society groups around hot topics. So just to give one example, I'll give two examples. One is Ukraine 2 years ago introduced a new education law which strengthens the use of Ukrainian language, mm-hmm. And we hold dialogues between the Ministry of Education and minority groups to see that the minority rights are respected.
Jeff, I know you had another example, sure. But let's move on to a more tangible aspect that we can get our hands around. Recently, there have been a spate of explosions at Ukrainian Defense Ministry ammunition depots. And there's also been hundreds of incidents involving chemical hazards. And what is your office doing to ensure safety?
So in the area of chemical safety and security, we basically have several projects, and the idea is to help adapt the regulatory framework to help the country transition kind of from a command and control system that obviously was from the Soviet Union 30 years ago, but nevertheless it never was fully reformed to one where it's more market-based. Mm-hmm. The idea being that now that chemical industry is private, the government can't just call them up and tell them what to do. So right. They need a regulatory framework so that industry will adopt safer procedures. Mm-hmm. Also, we're working on emergency response, coordinated emergency response. If there's a chemical incident, you have to be able to identify the chemical first of all, right? And then the various services, medical, emergency response have to coordinate.
And what about demining? I was shocked to see that 7,000 square kilometers in Ukrainian-controlled territory are infested with mines, and another 9,000 or so square kilometers that are not controlled by the central government. Right.
So, I mean, mines obviously are something that will continue to kill people long after the conflict ends. Hopefully the conflict will end sooner rather than later, but the mines and unexploded ordnance, also unexploded artillery shells and various types of ordnance right. will remain in the ground. So what we're helping the government with is to adopt a humanitarian mine action strategy. The government of Ukraine, unfortunately, has been clearing mines basically since World War II and even before. But these are kind of like spot call-outs where you'll have all over the world, even in Washington or London, you have it. But now they need a system where you can take a large area, maybe there isn't even an object in the ground, but nevertheless you have to check that area and then certify that it's cleared. So we're helping them kind of with the policy implications of how you actually can do large area clearance, how you prioritize what you clear, and how you decide what's certified. In connection with that, we're helping them install a digital map which is very important because demining efforts usually take decades and involve many, many different actors. And without this digital map, you'll just be kind of going, literally going over the same ground again and again.
And what about cyber? I know you're heavily involved in that field as well.
Right. So in the elections area, we're helping the Central Elections Commission strengthen its cybersecurity. It's no secret that this is a concern of countries all over the world. Fortunately, I think most of Ukraine's election systems are actually not connected to the internet, even if they're computerized. Wow. But nevertheless, there are vulnerabilities, and we're helping them with kind of basically commercial solutions on cybersecurity.
And finally, Israel is part of the Mediterranean group of partners to the OSCE. What is Israel contributing to this mission?
So what I can say is a couple years ago, we started a project on psychological rehabilitation for conflict-affected populations, meaning former combatants, obviously things like PTSD, also people living in the conflict zone. And we actually drew heavily on Israeli trainers because Israel has tremendous experience with conflict resilience of the population and then recovery, and also an added benefit, the Israeli trainer spoke Russian, so they did
the Israelis speak Russian.
Right.
Fabulous.
Right.